So welcome everyone this afternoon to our Musculoskeletal Health at Work seminar. For those of you who don't know me and who joined since I gave the introduction first thing, I'm Michelle Saunders, Workplace Health Project Officer working with the Kent and Medway Healthy Workplace Programme. So just going to run through some information this afternoon which I hope will be really useful for you around addressing musculoskeletal health at work, looking at how nutrition and physical activity have an impact on that. So I'll get underway with just some introductions. So just some general housekeeping before we start the main presentations. It's lovely to have everyone here on this virtual event. Obviously, if you do need to take a phone call, please stay on mute while you do that. If you need, there's no break during this session. It will last around an hour. So if you do need the facilities wherever you are, feel free to pop away from the screen and come back. As I said, please do stay on mute. We may have options and we can ask you to unmute in a Q&A session, but if you've got a particular question, feel free to raise your hand or use the chat function. Make sure you're comfortable, you've got a drink to hand. We'll aim to finish just around 2 o'clock this afternoon. So I'd like to be social during this event, so if you do want to share that you're at this event on social media, LinkedIn or Twitter or whatever platforms you use, please do mention us with the hashtag KM Healthy Workplaces. Following the session, if you've got questions, you can email the team on workplacehealth@medway.gov.uk. Right. So why does workplace health matter? I know a number of you that are attending today know this, but we're just going to run over some basic things. It's always good to remind ourselves. So just some statistics around the issues about workplace health. So that 1 in 3 people of working age report having at least one long-term health condition. And in the next 10 years, I need to change these now to say the next 9 years since it's 2021, that's set to rise to 40%. So that's a huge proportion of our colleagues and our teams that will be living with a long-term health condition. And in fact, 1 in 8 employees, between 1 in 8 and 1 in 10 employees live with a musculoskeletal condition, which is why we've put this seminar on this afternoon, as it's an increasing concern and increasing need for people to be able to prevent some of these conditions from happening and manage them better in the workplace. Obviously, workplace health does matter. Work and health are very much linked together. So if we have a good worker health, they're more productive. That helps with business competitiveness. That's good for the economy and prosperity and society. And that also increases the social well-being and wealth for that individual, which then again helps them to stay healthy. So that healthy and happy workforce is good for the workplaces, it's good for productivity, it's good for the economy, and it's good for the community as well. Just a very brief overview of the Kent and Medway Healthy Workplace Programme for anyone who's joined today who's not already linked in with it. This is a free to join programme in Kent and Medway where we support businesses through a journey of health at work. So it's pledge based, it's very flexible, and it's really designed with your staff in mind. So at the Bronze Awards, that's a level which makes sure all those basics are in place so that you can get started on your healthy workplace journey. There are 10 bronze pledges, and these are the only ones that are compulsory, looking at things like a needs assessment, that you've got the right policies in place, that there's good communication, and health and safety basics are also in place. And then we move into silver and gold awards, where we're focusing on 8 key themes for you to make pledges around. So you can make 15 pledges for a silver award and 30 for a gold once you've completed that bronze level. And the themes are managing absence and turnover, musculoskeletal health and screening, mental well-being and stress, stopping smoking, alcohol and substance misuse, healthy eating and healthy weight, physical activity and active travel, and the environment and sustainability. Very much led by the employer, we're supported with free resources and advice from our team. And once a business has got to gold, we're here to continue supporting you. We appreciate that your staff groups change, your needs change, and there's a bit of extra stretch for continuous improvement for businesses who want to move to platinum and demonstrate more social values as well. So the benefits of the workplace include reduced sick leave, increased productivity, increased staff engagement, and what we've seen more and more in our evaluations is just an increased willingness for staff to make those healthy changes. Through the programme, you'll get regular newsletters keeping you up to date on current campaigns, training and events. Workplace health checks and MOTs, they are subject to availability. Obviously in the current lockdown we're not able to offer those, but they will be coming back online as soon as we're able to do so. We also work and offer a number of groups such as stop smoking support, physical activity challenges and sessions, and different topics of training such as mental health and alcohol and workplace champions. And currently we're doing those all virtually, so people can do those on Zoom or from Microsoft Teams, and access those whether they're working in their office still or working at home. We also offer supports around different workshops, guidance for policies and wellbeing days. It's really easy to sign up to the programme if you haven't already done so. You can visit the website medway.gov.uk/healthy workplace. We'll provide you with a programme overview and arrange a meeting with you to discuss how this would work best in your workplace. So that's it from me. I'm going to stop screen sharing and Catherine's going to share her screen and start talking through some musculoskeletal health with you.
Thanks, Michelle. I'll just go ahead and get myself situated now. Let's see. Right. So can we all see the screen? Maybe thumbs up if you can. Okay, wonderful. Yay, I love it when technology works. Okay, so as Michelle said, my name's Catherine Swinney. Let me just do screen share. There we go. And I am the Workplace Health Project Coordinator in East Kent, so covering Ashford, Canterbury, Thanet, Dover, Shepway. And if you can't tell from the accent, I'm originally from America. I worked as an exercise specialist in employee well-being back in Florida, and then have now worked over here for a number of years. And so what I'll be covering in the session today is looking at really how physical activity can reduce sort of the incidence and really just try to prevent any further musculoskeletal problems within the workplace. So as Michelle already sort of mentioned some really key stats, I won't cover this slide in too much detail, but it could be a really great visual if you are trying to maybe put a business case together to senior leadership. And that's certainly something that we can, offer resources for if you'd like. But yeah, just some key stats there. 1 in 10 number of employees that are living with a musculoskeletal condition, and 8.9 million days lost just to musculoskeletal alone, and just in 1 year in the 2019 to 2020 financial year. And those stats come, the 8.9 million comes from the most recent Health and Safety Executive work-related musculoskeletal report that came out in late 2020. So again, we can see it's a big problem, and now we want to sort of focus on, okay, what causes musculoskeletal problems within the workplace? Musculoskeletal is a broad term that does cover sort of general population as well, with those sort of arthritis, but what we'll be focusing on is musculoskeletal in the workplace. So we want to understand sort of, what are the causes? What are the sort of common environments or working pattern situations that are often present when we do report a musculoskeletal case? So they shouldn't be sort of too shocking. We often think of work environments, manual handling, working in awkward or tiring positions. So for anyone that is sort of working from home at the moment and is maybe sort of on a kitchen table and you've got your laptop on one side and then you're having to type in a diagonal on the other, that might be a good example of working in an awkward position. And then, as we're all probably familiar, as we do so much keyboard and laptop work nowadays, just that repetitive work on the hands and wrists can be a problem for musculoskeletal. And then there are some working patterns or working sort of scenarios that are also often present when a musculoskeletal case is reported. And those are sort of fixed or constrained body positions. So again, like thinking about sort of current at home, work environments, desk setups, that could contribute to that. Continual repetition of movement. So again, if we're having to type a lot, or if we're in more of a industrial setting, if we're having to sort of, perpetually sort of take things off and unload and load. Looking at force, a concentrated force on a small body part, often the hand and wrist. So again, typing and excessive force on typing or doing really technical bits, that can be really hard on the wrists. And then a pace of work that doesn't allow sufficient recovery between movements. And so I put that in there. We probably aren't that surprised by sort of the causes of musculoskeletal, but it's really important. If we can understand the cause, then we can understand and we can make better decisions options for our businesses and for our employees going forward. And particularly with that working patterns column, that second column there, as an exercise specialist, I sort of look at that list, that bullet points, and sort of decode that in a different way. So if we specifically looked at fixed or constrained body positions, I, as an exercise specialist, read that as, okay, so that's often going to relate to sort of muscular tightness. So if we're in a fixed position and we're not really moving, or we're in Zoom meetings nearly all day, every day, if we're constantly in one position, that's going to start to feel really stiff, and we're going to experience muscular stiffness and muscular tightness. Continual repetition of movements, so that's related to more of an overuse problem. So it's something where our, whatever body part, whether it's the back, the neck, the wrists, we're doing a particular movement that it's either in our work or in our daily life, and that muscle isn't strong enough, it doesn't have enough muscular endurance to keep up with the demands of our daily life or the demands of our job, or both. So that's an overuse muscular strength problem. Same thing on the next one. So again, small body parts, often we don't prioritize strengthening them. That's going to be a lack of muscular strength, lack of muscular endurance to keep up with the demands that we're placing on them. And then the pace of work is slightly different. It could be overuse, and it could be a lack of muscular endurance, again, where for example, if we were unloading and loading a van, right? We're having to use our back, we're having to use our legs. It might be a muscular endurance issue again, or it could be we need to reassess, whatever demands we're placing on our employees and look at the work demands and the work capacity. So that last one's slightly twofold. But again, as an exercise specialist, when you look at that, think overuse, muscular endurance, and muscular tightness are kind of the two takeaways or the two themes that we're seeing. So again, this is from the Health and Safety Executive, their report. So we see that upper limbs and necks are the most common number of cases reported for musculoskeletal. Then we see back, followed by lower limb. But interestingly, if we look at that orange tables, we see sort of the average number of days lost in each of those cases. And even though lower limb is sort of less in terms of full number of cases, they often are the cases that are out the longest. And that can be slightly related to the actual cause. So if it's something like hip surgery, obviously you're going to have to take longer to recover. Same thing with neck and upper limb. It can take a long time, mostly because it's related to more chronic or inflammation use. So we understand some of the causes now. We know the areas that are often impacted by it, but how do we actually tackle that? And that's what we're here for, right? So from an individual standpoint, there are a couple of things that we can control and that we can't control. What we can't control is sort of our genetic, predispositions, and we can't control getting older. But some of the things we do have control as an individual is if we are a smoker, quitting smoking, because the research does show that smokers do experience more back pain and are more likely to experience disabling back pain. And that's partially related to a lower bone mass, lower bone mineral density. So if we are a smoker, looking at quitting smoking and promoting stop smoking sort of support for those. Other things that my colleague Gabriella will talk about in just a minute is looking at a healthy diet and then physical activity, because we do know from research that those who are inactive are more likely to experience musculoskeletal problems. So those are individual, but there's a lot of things organizationally and culturally that we can do as well to really foster an environment that tries to prevent musculoskeletal problems. So that's looking at particular support for those with chronic conditions or comorbidities, as again, the research shows that 7 in 10 people who report living with a long-term musculoskeletal problem are overweight or obese, and that those who are over 50 with musculoskeletal pain, 33.9% of them experience persistent anxiety issues, and 22% experience persistent depression. So again, some of these go hand in hand. So just looking out for that. Also looking at reassessing the work demands in the work environment. So going back to that last slide, that final bullet point, and then having regular DSE assessments, particularly when we're working from home. because we are sort of in environments that we can't fully control. But as an organization, if we can sort of offer support, offer, bringing the equipment back home with your employees, or offering sort of discounts or subsidized sort of office equipment or vouchers to that, those are all things that we can try to do to support our staff. And then there's cultural factors. So I think of organization often as sort of your policy, and I think of cultural more as what are the norms in your team. If I was a new starter and I saw that no one took a break and constantly worked through lunch, then I'm probably going to not work through, I'm going to work through lunch as well. I'm going to sort of adapt to whatever the norm is. So culturally, it's making sure that we are exemplifying regular breaks and really encouraging our staff to take regular breaks, and then making sure we have an environment where people feel comfortable raising those concerns and not fear of any sort of penalty. So in terms of physical activity, we'll cover the reducing, how it can help with reducing musculoskeletal disorders, and we'll look at what resources are there and putting it into practice. Now, this next visual with the physical activity guidelines on it shouldn't look all that sort of new to you, but if it is, it's a really great, colorful visual flyer to sort of have around and circulate with your team. But it just sort of shows that we should be, as general population, we should be aiming to achieve 150 minutes of moderate physical activity or 75 minutes of vigorous physical activity, or a combination of them. And that's per week, not per day. I just want to make that clear. And then it's at least 2 days of strengthening training or resistance training covering the major muscle groups, minimizing sedentary time, and breaking up periods of inactivity. For older adults, it also mentions including at least 2 days of balance exercises. So again, those are sort of what we're aiming for. That's what we want to try to achieve in a week. If we were solely looking at the perspective of musculoskeletal problems, then particularly, again, if we go back, what were the two things, right? It was muscular endurance, lack of strength, lack of endurance to perform these exercises, and muscular tightness. So if we were to take those two and look at what parts of the guidelines would be most relevant to that, it's going to be your 2 days of strength training and minimizing sedentary time, so doing more flexibility work. So again, that's just, it's not that any sort of aerobic exercise or balance exercises aren't going to be impactful, but that the strength training and the stretching have the strongest level of evidence to support preventing musculoskeletal problems. Okay, but again, so if we do have any staff that have experienced musculoskeletal pain in the past, or you just know in general it's a concern in sort of your field, there are some specific muscular considerations, and it's going to go back to the areas of the body that are often injured during or experience injuries from musculoskeletal pain. So your upper limb and neck, your back, and your lower limb, and these are sort of the areas, if we break it down, that particularly if you have someone or yourself experience musculoskeletal pain, doing strength training exercises that specifically target these areas are going to be, again, most impactful. If you don't have any musculoskeletal pain and you just are generally active in doing exercises throughout your week, like walking or group fitness classes, whatever it may be, typically those exercises are a combination of cardiovascular and strength. So walking is still, it's mostly cardiovascular, right? But we still have to use our muscles to hold our skeleton upright in that standing position. So you're always going to get a little bit of a benefit. But if we're trying to get the most benefit out of reducing musculoskeletal pain, it's going to be focusing on these areas. Now, dynamic stretching, what I mean by that is just, so dynamic just means movement, right? So it's looking at doing stretches that are often like we're moving, we're doing circles or neck circles, things like that. Again, it's incorporating that constant movement with it. And that goes back to the muscular tightness compared to sort of passive stretching. And that's just when we often think of stretching, right? We hold a stretch, right? We hold our neck stretch. Those are still going to be great. But again, if we want the most sort of bang for our buck there, doing dynamic stretching, which is just typically moving, so rotating the spine, doing neck circles, shoulder shrugs, things like that are going to be helpful with muscular tightness. Okay, so in terms of what resources are out there, so we say, right, you say we should be active, but how are we really trying to encourage our staff right now when all the leisure centers are closed. We're really limited in doing sort of stuff that's local to us. I totally understand, and I'm in the same boat as well. So what I've done is created sort of a hyperlink of all these different resources that are available. Obviously, if it's NHS, and Kent-based, it's free. For the wider UK public sector in that third column, the Our Parks is free. It is a private company, but they have sort of moved all of their classes online for free. They typically partner with local boroughs, but all this stuff you can do sort of free 30-minute circuits of all different types of group fitness classes for free there, with over, I think, 50 classes a week. So it's a really good option, delivered over Zoom. But they also have a 9-week structured program that people can do with pre-recorded videos for free. And they do incorporate, it's 1 day of cardio, 1 day of lower body strength, and 1 day of core. So if we're thinking about which areas are being targeted, that is a pretty good structure to give to someone or encourage someone to take. The hyperlinks that are in purple are the ones that are particularly going to be relevant from a strength perspective, that when I was putting this slide deck together. But again, in general, if you're just generally active and healthy and not experiencing musculoskeletal pain, any movement, any activity is still going to be impactful. But there's some really great resources there. We've got, One U Kent, a Better Medway, or whatever your local council equivalent is for One U. They all offer sort of free behavior change. So if you are trying to get active and need a bit of support, they're going to be able to do that. And depending on, your council or who's providing it in your area, they might typically will have a physical activity specialist that you may be able to get some support with, or offer classes. So when we send out the slide deck, we'll be sure to send all these links and you can have a look there. Right, so now we want to put it into practice. It's really important, to sort of look at how can we sort of take any of these webinars that we're doing and really apply it to your organization. So this is just a collection of, things that between working in workplace health for a number of years that sort of myself and my team have found are sort of part of best practice, things that are really effective at fostering a culture of well-being. So it starts, again, if we look at it, it starts wider. It starts with organization. It's your policies in place. Then it narrows into sort of what are your peer pressures? What are the norms in your environment? And then we can look at sort of individually, what interventions can I do for myself to really sort of get that top bottom approach there. So from an organizational perspective, it looks at flexible work policies. So we know when it's winter and we have very limited daylight and it's cold and wet and miserable, really encouraging staff members to sort of get out during the lunch break. If depending on your sector, if you're able to take a slightly longer lunch break and have those flexible work policies, so staff do feel comfortable to sort of get up, go for a walk around their house during lunch, and then just work a little bit later potentially. Those are all things that really are impactful during these times. Also encouraging regular stretch breaks, again, really important with that muscular tightness. So I've in the past have worked with companies that have literally scheduled Outlook events as water cooler, and it's just a 15-minute stretch break, but they sort of intentionally designate that time to get together as a team, open up video, and do some stretches and have a chat with each other. So that's really good for not only fostering, communication and team building, but also getting up and moving. I've also had others that have used Outlook reminders and sent links or flyers of visuals of stretches that they can do at different times of the day to break it up. So again, those are just some ideas that can be really effective and are quite, they offer nearly pretty much for free. Again, having a regular culture and promotion of health and safety and well-being is obviously going to be important related to this. And depending on your, organization circumstances, offering either subsidized gym memberships or offering subsidized sort of virtual fitness sort of sessions can be helpful. When it comes to team fitness challenges, this is where sort of in prior experience, I will try to share my wisdom where I can. It's really, really effective if you set it up correctly. So if we're doing things that are more actively versus passive, if you sort of, when I say passive, I mean, if you just sort of send someone the link to Joe Wicks, we all have YouTube, we've all had it for years. Why have we never done it? It's because it's really easy to sort of ignore it and be like, oh, I don't have time for this. I've got all these other things to do, right? If it's more active, the intervention, then people feel more engaged and are more likely to stick to it. So if we said, here's some links to some stretches versus here's, we're going to have someone come in and do a 15-minute stretch break with us, or we're going to have sort of this designated well-being champion out of our team who's going to send the Outlook reminder for the water cooler moment and send a video, and we're all going to do teams and we can watch each other do it, then it's going to be more, it's a lot harder to say no to, even if it's virtual nowadays. So yeah, pairing something that is a bit more intentional and also has that accountability built in by either having a friendly face in your team, really encouraging everyone and really fostering that environment, or if it's something more external. Having those things is a little bit more effective versus sort of passive interventions, like just sort of sending a flyer or a link. One thing, if you are like, okay, well, how would I do this? Is Kent Sport has, it's on the other page of the resources, but they have an activity tracker with workplace challenges, and you can actually create a bespoke workplace challenge for your team. It's all free and there's no minimum number of staff required. You just work with Lucy from Kent Sport to sort of put it together. And that could be a really great way to sort of have a challenge. People can use their phones or any sort of major health trackers, Fitbits, things like that. And you can have a little workplace challenge that way and have that accountability. And also looking at green spaces, what walking routes are around your area when we are back into a physical environment. So lastly, looking at organization, those are some big tips. If you want any more sort of support, or if you maybe have an idea but you'd like some advice, we'd be more than happy to sort of support you with that. That's what I love to do. So please, get in contact with us if you do have any more questions. But more as an individual as well, there's a lot of things we can do. It starts small. Whenever we want to sort of add any new behaviors like getting active or doing any, exercises, always sort of start small and then build up. So we're building on our success versus feeling like we're not achieving. And then find activities you enjoy. I can't tell you the number of personal training clients or group fitness clients I've worked with where they would say something like, oh, I know I'm supposed to do HIIT training, or I know I'm supposed to do 15 minutes on the treadmill, but I actually hate running. And it's like, you're going to enjoy it more. You're going to do it more often if you find something that you enjoy to do versus something that you feel is an obligation. So just have a play, especially while it's virtual. Again, our parks, things like that, has lots of different activities that you can try and see what's going to be, helpful to you and what you are more passionate with. Having a deadline is really important as well. So things like those team challenges with the Kent Sport activity tracker, bespoke workplace challenges are really helpful because they're time bound. Or if you are doing something like a multi-week fitness plan on yourself from the NHS offer, having it, doing it with a coworker can help with that accountability. Remembering your why. So that's really important when we think about motivation. So maybe for some, it is, I experience musculoskeletal pain and I'm tired of being in pain. I'm tired of feeling weak. I want to get stronger. I want to do something. And that's going to be enough motivation for them to adopt that behavior and sustain it. But maybe for others, they may be struggling with that. So just always try to remember your why and break it down. And for any perfectionists in the room, it's always really helpful of a reminder to remind that there's never going to be a perfect timing. And as we see with lockdown, we're constantly having to adapt our routine. So there will never be a perfect time, but always remember some is better than none. Those are sort of just kind of personal tips that I've sort of experienced and hope are helpful and beneficial to you all. But I will go ahead and stop sharing my screen and then we'll continue on with Gabriella.
Oh, thank you, Catherine. That was really useful. So we're going to save any questions people have till the end. So if you have got any questions you'd like to ask, please do type them into the chat function. We'll run through those at the end, just sort of quite conscious of time. So if Gabriella, if you'd like to unmute and now share your screen. Gabriella is a nutritionist who's in the public health team in Medway, and she's just going to share some tips about how a healthy diet can benefit your musculoskeletal health.
Sorry, I don't know what I've done. Hello everyone, it's Gabriella. It's the first time I'm using Zoom, so please be, trying to find the presentation which is open, but it doesn't work.
That's annoying, isn't it? We tested it all out earlier as well.
Yes, I tested it just earlier and now it's not working. Let me just, close the presentation and open it again. Maybe that way will work.
That's always good. It's always the if in doubt, just sort of turn it off and on kind of situation that normally works.
Yeah, thanks for your suggestion,
Yes,
Deanne.
is this working?
Oh yeah, there we go. So Deanne just suggested that I share it. Deanne just suggested I share it for you, and you can say to move on. But we've just got there in the nick of time. Thanks for your suggestion there, Deanne. Over to you, Gabriella.
Sorry about this. Thank you very much for your patience and for waiting. So I'm Gabriella. I work in Medbay Council in public health team in the nutrition, more specific in nutrition, delivering programs related to healthy lifestyle and healthy food. So today I'm going to talk to you about the importance of nutrition in supporting our musculoskeletal health. And just a short overview of what are the goals of today's talk. It's to understand how what we eat affects our body and therefore our musculoskeletal health. Learn how to use food to support our musculoskeletal health. What affects our nutritional status when it comes to bone health, and what resources are available there for further support. A short introduction on why good musculoskeletal health is so important. It's because it maintains our functional abilities throughout the life course, from the moment we are born until we get older. It's fundamental to healthy aging because it enables our well-being in older age. There are lots of factors impacting our musculoskeletal health, as Catherine has already covered, but I have them here as well. And the most important ones are those that we can change. We have an ability to act upon. So the first one is nutrition, and I'm going to cover this in more depth just in a second. Then is the physical activity, as we've seen from what Catherine told us. Weight is also important, and Catherine told us some numbers there that those who are overweight and obese, they are at higher increased risk of having musculoskeletal problems. But why weight? Because the weight puts pressure on our bones and on our articulations. Smoking is another factor that we can act upon, and smoking it has a big impact on so many processes that are happening in our body. So it slows down the different processes that build up and repair our bodies, which is something very important when it comes to musculoskeletal health. So why food and nutrition is important? Well, first of all, it's vital for our survival. It's part of our body. It makes us, it gives us energy, not just to be physically active, but to keep our heart beating, to keep our brain working, and so on. So for all these vital processes, it keeps us healthy, and very important for our muscles and bones, it helps us grow and repair. So a healthy, balanced diet can help us build healthy bones and muscles from an early age and maintain them throughout life. And because nutrition is so important in our musculoskeletal health, I would like to cover just a few nutrients that are very important in this aspect. And I want to bring your attention first to proteins, because proteins are a structural part of our muscles, and bones the same. It's not just the muscles. Muscles, they represent 30% protein by weight. And proteins, they provide us with amino acids, which are the building blocks for growth and repair. We grow and repair our muscles and bones throughout our life. So we need proteins and exercise together to ensure a healthy growth for muscles and for our bones. But what happens if we don't have enough proteins in our diets? If we lack proteins, that may lead to poor muscle strength or even weak bones. And this in turn may lead to increased risk of falling and even poor recovery for people who have had an injury or suffered a fracture. The next thing I want to cover is about what foods actually provide us with protein, because there's not just the lean meat, poultry, and fish. We also have eggs, nuts, seeds, and pulses, very good sources of proteins, and dairy foods and alternatives such as soy products. And here are just a few examples of normal portion sizes of foods and how much those will provide in terms of protein from the daily requirements that we need. And just as examples, so a portion of 90 grams of lean meat cooked will provide us 53% of what we need in our diet in a day. A cooked chicken breast, 120 grams, will provide 77%, fish 64%, one large egg, which is equates to 60 grams, will represent about 15%. 22 grams of almonds, for example, will give us 9.3%. 100 grams of baked beans, I think it's 10%. Sorry, I don't see it on my screen at the moment. And cheese, 30 grams, which is a portion size, will give us 15%. Cow's milk, 200 ml, 14%, and soya milk for those who are lactose intolerant, for example, or they don't eat dairy foods, 200 ml will give us almost 10% of what we need in a day. So really, it's not just the meat that gives us good proteins. We have other sources, and it's a mixture of these products that will give us the proteins that we need in a day. And really, we don't need a lot of them, a huge amount of these foods. Another important nutrient in relation to bone health is calcium, because, well, we store 99% of the calcium in our bones. They give the strength to our bones, but we have another 1%, which is very important to look at, because the other 1% of calcium in our body has very important roles, and that's to help muscle contraction and nerve function. And this calcium in our blood is very tightly controlled by our body, and that's why it's important to have it in our diet every day. Adults are recommended to have around 700 milligrams per day. And good sources of calcium will be pulses, nuts and seeds, green vegetables, dairy products, of course. And here I've given a few examples of how much different types of food will provide us with calcium, to see that not only dairy products give us calcium. So sardines and pilchards, 50 grams as a portion will give us 29%, which is equal to 30 grams of cheese, for example, which will give us 29%. But that if we eat them with the bones, because that's where the calcium comes from. Then we have oranges, which contains about 7% of what we need in a day, or broccoli, also 7% as a typical portion size. Milk, 200 ml, which is a regular portion, will give us 34%. And a teaspoon of tahini, it's again another very good source of calcium. So the seeds, as I was saying, a very good source of calcium in our diet. And another very important nutrient for our bone health is vitamin D. And we require this because it helps us to absorb calcium from our food. 90% of it comes from sun exposure, and that's when vitamin D is made when we expose our skin to ultraviolet B rays. We don't need a long time to sit in the sun in order to get the vitamin D that we need. And exposing our face, hands, and arms for 10 to 15 minutes per day should be enough for most people. But those with darker skin, because they build up vitamin D slower, they will need a longer time of exposing to sun. 10 milligrams is recommended at the moment from Public Health England to be consumed as to have it as a supplement in our diet throughout autumn and winter. That's because we don't have, as we can see, we don't have sun during this time. And because it's so important to have the sun, then we can replace this with supplement. And the rest of vitamin D might come with from the diet, but it's just 10%, so it's not huge amount. And some foods rich in vitamin D would include oily fish such as salmon or mackerel, eggs, lamb's liver, fortified food products such as milk, orange juices, certain cereals, and spreads. Cheese is very good source of vitamin D, and certain fortified mushrooms as well. So we've seen a few of the important micronutrients and macronutrients for our muscles and our bones, but our muscles and bones, they are impacted by so many other things in relation to our health, because there are so many reactions that are happening in our body which can influence in a way our bones and our muscles. And this is why it's important to have generally a well-balanced diet. And this is the Eat Well Guide is a tool used to advise and to give information of what the Department of Health recommends as having as being a balanced diet. The Eat Well Guide is applicable to almost everyone, except for children under the age of 2 and those who have health conditions or certain dietary needs, different dietary needs. What are the key messages of the Eat Well Guide in order to achieve that balanced, healthy diet is to include as many vegetables and fruits as we can in a day, at least 5 portions, to base our meals around foods that contain potatoes, bread, rice, pasta, and other starchy carbohydrates, focusing when we can on choosing products that are higher in fiber, such as whole grains. Consume a small amount of fats, unsaturated fats, choosing unsaturated fats when possible. Having dairy products and calcium enriched alternatives such as soy products. Consuming daily foods which are rich in proteins such as eggs, fish, meat, and pulses, and other food products which contain proteins. And if we have in a day, let's say, products which are high in sugar or high in salt, consume them less often and in smaller amounts, of course. And the last one will be hydration. It's important to have 6 to 8 drinks every day to support our metabolism and the function of our body. Top tips for a better musculoskeletal health. Get outside and enjoy safe sun exposure. If it's a very strong sun outside, then avoid lunchtime. Eat calcium-rich foods to support our bone health. Have a varied and balanced diet to support overall health of our body. Plan your meals, because planning it helps us to have the an overview of what we have in our diet and makes healthier choices easier. And have a good night's sleep and reduce stress, because it's during the time we sleep that we grow and repair, and stress is something that affects our sleep. So they go hand in hand. If we don't sleep enough, we might be stressed the next second day. If we are too stressed, we can't sleep properly. So looking at which one we tackle the first time is the best approach. And putting things into practice, if you don't know or you struggle into what changes to make to your diet, I have a few examples of some easy swaps around food. For breakfast, for example, we could, instead of having just milk with cornflakes, we could choose some porridge with bananas and some almond flakes. They come with a bit more nutrition, such as proteins and calcium as well. Or maybe we could go for a whole grain bread with some cottage cheese, again, something that might support our bone health with providing us with calcium. For lunch, instead of having white bread and some processed ham, we could, or very high sugary chocolate bars, we could have a sandwich for sandwich lovers, for example, with eggs, which are good source of protein, vitamin D2, and the whole grain bread comes with some protein as well, but also B vitamins. Or we could have a salad with some whole grain pasta and some cheese or some chicken breast. It's your choice, even some tuna maybe, some fish. For snacks, easy swaps, again, instead of having things which are sugary and high in salt, we could have with us some nuts and seeds, very good in proteins, in calcium as well, to support our bones, muscles as well, and or maybe a yogurt with some fresh fruits. And the last one, for dinner, just a simple example, instead of the fish and chips, occasionally, it's not about eliminating or never having it, but occasionally to switch it for some salmon, which will give us some omega-3, which actually fights inflammation and is very good when we have pain, for example. Broccoli, a good source of calcium, and with some any other green vegetables really as a source of calcium. Things to avoid, we've seen what is important and what is good for our bones, but there are things that are going to affect our bones and we might call them bone robbers. These are caffeine. If we consume an excessive amount of caffeine, that interferes with calcium absorption, and that might impact on how our bones are repaired. Too much salt also causes the body to lose calcium, and it also might lead further during the time to weaker bones. Fizzy drinks, studies have shown that people who drink a lot of cola may be at risk of bone loss, but also fizzy drinks, they erode our teeth enamel. Limit alcohol intake because, or reduce actually alcohol intake. Excessive alcohol also negatively affects the absorption of calcium. And avoid smoking because, as I said, smoking slows down certain processes in our body. And in this case, for bone growth, it slows down the cells that build our bone in your body. How can I help, or what can you do to help your colleagues and your employees? Promote lunch breaks and healthy eating when possible and as often as possible. If you have a canteen, if you are in a place where you have a canteen, promote healthier drinks over fizzy drinks such as water, 100% fruit juices, or even milk for hydration. And you could signpost your colleagues to support available in the local area. So let's see a few of further support. In Medway, Public Health delivers the Healthy Way program, which is a 12-week course, lifestyle. It's free to attend to all Medway residents, and we talk about not just nutrition, but all things related to a healthy lifestyle, such as stress management, diabetes prevention, physical activity as well, behavior change, and many more. There is One You Can't as well. My colleague Natalia will speak about this in a few seconds. And there is the NHS One You campaign with lots of resources of what people can do to live a healthier lifestyle in terms of not just nutrition, but physical activity as well. And for bone health related, Royal Osteoporosis Society has more information about and resources about how to maintain healthy bones. In summary, sufficient calcium, vitamin D, and proteins are essential to building and maintaining a healthy skeleton throughout the life. Expose to sun daily for 10 to 15 minutes per day and have a supplement of vitamin D during winter months. A diverse, balanced diet rich in nutrients may help to prevent muscle loss and bone loss, and limit consumption of caffeine, salt, alcohol, and fizzy drinks. That was it from me. Thank you very much for listening, and I will stop and sharing my presentation.
Oh, thank you, Gabriella. Lots of really useful information there. I mean, I've worked in health promotion for a good few years, but I've been making notes of some extra things that I've learned today, so really useful. Thank you for that. We've got a couple of questions in the chat, which we'll come back to shortly. But Natalia, if you'd like to share your screen now and just give us a brief overview in sort of 5 or 10 minutes as to what One You Kent offers in terms of support for people. If you are in Medway, One You Kent covers the rest of Kent apart from Medway, and you would come to the A Better Medway team. So similar services, just bear in mind that this is for businesses in the wider Kent, or if you have residents in Kent. Yeah, we are running a bit short of time, Deanne, so we're just going to sort of give Natalia just a few minutes to give a very brief overview of One You Kent. If you do need to leave at 2 o'clock, that's absolutely fine. And we'll obviously follow up any questions afterwards, but if you do want to hang around afterwards, we can field questions, so no problem if you do need to leave at 2 o'clock. So Natalia, if you'd like to share your screen.
Thank
and we'll
you,
hand
Michelle.
over to
Yeah,
you.
I'll try to be as quick as possible. One You has been mentioned already a couple times, so I guess people can also find out a lot of information from the slide. Just sharing my screen, as everyone can see it.
Yes.
Okay, so One You, well, welcome, and yes, it is a service which we offering across the Kent. I personally, my name is Natalia, and I work for Sevenoak District Council One You service, which is public health service. The campaign ran from 2016, so it's not a new service. Let me just display this slide. I'm not sure if you can see it properly. Okay, so before anything, you know, One You offer how are you quiz, which it can be offered to individual, obviously in your workplaces. It basically asks you how healthy you are. It's not a health assessment, it's not medical assessment, it's just a quiz, just to tell you exactly how to improve your lifestyle. It will ask you how healthy you are and give you 10 minutes quiz, kind of personalized health score. It will ask you about your food you eat, you drink, basically how often you drink alcohol, and whatever do you smoke or not. It has been designed to people, the how are you has been designed for people over 18, so it is mostly for adult. So what about One You? So One You, like it's been mentioned, it is the service run across the Kent, and it's national service run by the public health. One You is been designed to encourage adults to participate in more healthy lifestyle, so address and improve the lifestyle behavior. So myself, what I do is I work for the local authority. However, One You run in various settings across the Kent. So what do? We obviously trying to help people to achieve their lifestyle goals, like give up smoking, lose weight, increase physical activities. Across the Kent, and has been mentioned already, we run NHS health check. Unfortunately, at the moment, due to COVID, that has been a little bit disturbed. However, it is a test again designed for people between age of 40 to 72 without pre-existing condition, so they can just prevent the risk of developing any health conditions such as diabetes, heart condition, stroke. So that's a good thing. If you haven't heard about this, please do speak to your GP or just self-refer yourself for the NHS health check once it's running again. Myself, I'm based in local authority, so as a 1U, we support exercise on referrals to our leisure center once they function again, hopefully. Walking for Health, which is very popular scheme. I talk about this a bit in a later session, and group exercise classes. So that's what 1U in general do. I personally, what do I do as an advisor? I run 1U weight loss classes or groups currently via Zoom as well, which is working quite well. It's a free NHS program which we run to support our client with weight loss and maintain healthy weight for life. So it is designed to overweight adult and with body mass index of 30 plus. However, for BME community 27.5 plus. So it's a 12 weeks program, which we run, like I mentioned, via Zoom at the moment. It's addressing the whole nutrition, which has been mentioned just now. We're working closely with the guidance provided by British Heart Foundation, delivery, obviously portion control, food labeling session, of focusing it quite strictly around exercise. We have at the moment on the current one we're running, we have an instructor, physical exercise instructor live with us as well. So giving some cardiovascular 10 minutes to 30 minutes exercises also on a session. The great thing about us as an advisor, after the 12 weeks, we have opportunity to follow our client for up to 12 weeks and continue supporting them with the life changes. As an advisor, I also do lifestyle advising. So we're trying to reach most deprived community of Kent and signpost them to the organization to help them address wide health issue, like we mentioned here early today, things smoking, drinking as well. However, we also help with housing, education, possibly mental health issues as well. So we work with the client again up to 12 months. So that's about me. Additionally, as I mentioned earlier, NHS Health Check is part of 1U. We got advisor who support with quit smoking. So that's another part of my role. And also, as I mentioned, and really recommend the health walks, which is an amazing asset to communities, run across the whole Kent. It's a free. Anyone can join in. At the moment, again, everything has been suspended because of the lockdown, but even during the short period between lockdowns, we managed to restart them. It's run by the volunteers, so anyone can run them as long as they come for training to us. So myself as advisor, we provide trainings, we support the volunteers with running the schemes, assess at the moment for COVID and risk assessment. So everything is really running smoothly. And like I said, it's a great way of socializing. It's important for recovery, having break. And if you can fit in your work time, you know, go for 45 minutes and walk around your local community or around your workplace. It's a great way of being more active. And it's been mentioned again a few times today. So just let you know, when you got many apps and things that people can use themselves as an individual to act on the behavior. So very popular Couch to 5K, which people use it during the lockdown as a starting point to running. Very, very popular. Also been the Active 10, just for people like we mentioned today, 150 minutes a week of physical activity, brisk walks. 10 Active will support you with this. Additional easy meals, as we talk about nutrition, this is really great app where encourage people to cook from scratch or give them idea what they can have for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, counting the calories as well, which is giving better insight of what we're eating. Additionally, if people want to start, you know, thinking more about the alcohol consumption or smoke-free, great apps for this as well. And I think that's really it about 1U. Anything more, please do visit us, our website, 1U Kent website. and find support from any of us. We're here to support and signpost you and carry any behavior changes you think to address. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Natalia. That's really useful to have that update on the 1U services. If you could unshare your screen for me,
Doing
thank
this
you.
now. Thank you.
Thank you. So yeah, thank you for that session. It's really useful to get that overview of 1U Kent. And obviously those 1U apps, they are actually a national thing. So wherever you live in Kent, Medway or further afield, you can access those apps and download them for free. They had a couple of questions in the chat. So Catherine, I don't know if you wanted to read out the one about the best exercise for bone density and the answer for that. That would be really great.
Yeah, so what was it? So it was Deanne asked, you know, is running really the best exercise for increasing bone density, which is a really great question. And I did give her a brief sort of summary because I knew she probably had to leave. But the short answer is it's not the best, but it's not the worst. So running is helpful, like we said, like with walking, any sort of exercise. It might sort of be more predominantly cardio and more predominantly strength, but it's normally a mix of the two. So running obviously is cardiovascular, but you're still having to, you know, use the muscles. So it becomes a strength exercise in order to run. So any sort of strength exercise will play an impact, any sort of impact as well. We think running is hard impact and it can sort of maybe harm our bones, but actually the research shows that we need to continue to sort of do activity and have some impact so that our bones can respond and get stronger to whatever we sort of throw at it. So running is important. But typically, in terms of the level of evidence, it wouldn't be the strongest evidence for bone mineral density. Things like actual sort of resistance training, any sort of with an actual weight compared to body weight would be more impactful, but it's not terrible either.
Yeah, oh, thank you, Catherine. I don't know if anyone else, I know a couple of people have had to drop out for further meetings this afternoon, but did anyone else have any questions before we wrap up today?
I think there was one question about vitamin D from earlier.
Oh yeah, can it only be absorbed through direct sunlight in the spring and summer months, Jen asked.
Yes, I'm going to try and answer this question because we need our skin to be exposed to direct sun, right? But during the summer, we also have some clouds. It doesn't mean we are not going to produce that vitamin D, but it's going to produce at a slower rate because the intensity of ultraviolet bit rays is going to be lower. So it depends really on how strong the sun is and how it reaches the earth and our skin. So it has to be, well, not the skin being covered, or if we are using sunscreen, for example, we are not going to produce vitamin D. It has to be the bare skin and not for a long time, as I mentioned already, 10 to 15 minutes would be enough. And if we are doing this in the morning or in the evening during the summer times when the sun is very strong, then that is a safe exposure. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, thank you. And Kevin's asked, it's not particularly around sort of musculoskeletal health, but in general nutrition and obviously maintaining weight and healthy lifestyles. For reducing cholesterol, is it healthy diet that's best, healthy exercise, or a combination of both? Or does it depend on the reasons behind the high cholesterol, do you think?
Well, when it comes to health in general, including reducing cholesterol, is going to be a combination of diet and exercise. Yeah. Exercise works in its own ways of reducing cholesterol, but then diet provides us cholesterol. So we can't really work without one and another. They both have their own impact on our health.
Yeah. I would say related to exercise, though, within the sphere of exercise, cardiovascular exercises are particularly have the strongest level of evidence for reducing cholesterol. So again, anything will be helpful, but if we're looking at the most bang for our buck when it comes specifically to cholesterol, it will be cardiovascular exercising.
That's great. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Gabriella. So thank you all for coming this afternoon. We will send out a copy of the slides, and as a team, we've also got on the screen, you can see Musculoskeletal Health in the Workplace, a guide for employers. So everyone that's attended this afternoon will be sent a copy of that. It's based on the Public Health England toolkit that they put together with business in the community. So it's full of useful tips of what you can do in the workplace. And if you have any further questions after the session, please do get in touch with us. We'd be happy to have chats with individual businesses.
Yeah.
Also, Chloe's just typed another question. So how can they as a business make some of the strategies inclusive for people who are super fit and people that aren't?
Yeah.
I think really that's Chloe, about offering a balance of different strategies and initiatives, because obviously you are going to have those people that are super fit, and maybe musculoskeletal health isn't a concern from a fitness point of view, but it's bearing in mind things that Catherine said about the repetitive use of muscles and the other factors that come into it. But we'd be happy to have a separate chat with you outside of this seminar and have a look at some of the issues you might be facing and help you with that if that's of use.
Yeah, I've worked with companies before where when they had people who did ultra marathons and then they're also trying to get those that only did 10 minutes of activity to walk to their car each day. So it's definitely a challenge that's persistent across lots of organizations, but yeah, we can definitely have a chat about sort of different top tips that can be really helpful.
And I know some of the work we've done in the past with Kent Sport and the active workplace tracker you mentioned, Catherine, they can set different challenges. So if you do run a physical activity challenge, don't worry about the people that run marathons and streak out in front. They can set parameters so that it's best improved and encouraging people to get started. Yeah, we're happy to have a chat with you afterwards. So we'll send a copy of the slides out, a copy of the employer's guide. And if anyone thinks of anything after this session, wants to come back to us with any questions, and the email address again is workplacehealth@medway.gov.uk. But thank you all very much.
Thanks everyone, take care.
Oh, thank you everyone. I think it's just us left now. All the guests have thank you. Really informative session. So thank you for that. I'll just stop the recording. I don't need to record anymore.